"We need the $7,000 by tonight," my brother said, not even looking at the ICU door behind me. I blinked. "My son's on a ventilator, and you're talking about a honeymoon." My mother crossed her arms. "Family comes first, don't be selfish." I felt something inside me go very quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means you're calm. The kind that means something just broke, or maybe finally woke up. And that was the moment I stopped being the one they could use. My name is Nora. I'm 35 years old, and I never thought I'd have to choose between my child's life and my family's approval. I work as a hospital billing assistant. I know the irony. Every day I sit across from people drowning in medical paperwork, helping them find a way through. I understand insurance codes, hospital payment plans, financial hardship waivers. I've guided strangers through the worst moments of their lives with a steady hand and a calm voice. But when it was my son in that bed, I couldn't even steady my own hands. In my family, I was always the responsible one. Not the exciting one, not the favorite. Just the one who quietly fixed things when they fell apart. My brother Ryan had the charm. He had the laugh that lit up a room, the stories that made everyone lean in. Our parents adored him. They always had. Growing up, he floated from one mess to the next, and someone always cleaned it up. Usually that someone was me, or our parents with money they'd later pretend they didn't have. I became a single mother when my son Caleb was 2 years old. His father and I separated after a relationship that drained more than it ever gave. But Caleb, he made every hard day worth it. He was my whole reason. When I looked at him, I didn't see the struggle. I saw the only thing I'd ever built that truly mattered. For years, I'd been overlooked, dismissed in family conversations, left out of celebrations until my presence was needed for something practical. I was the person they called when the car broke down or the bill came due, not the person they called to share good news, not the person they thought of when planning holidays, just the one who was reliable, the one who wouldn't say no. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they never expected. Before I go any further, I want to stop for just a second and speak directly to you. If you've ever been the one your family leans on, but never truly sees, this story is for you. If you've spent years being the responsible one, the fixer, the one who holds everything together while everyone else gets celebrated, I see you. I know how exhausting that is. I know what it feels like to give and give and give, and still somehow be the villain when you finally stop. Have you ever been asked to sacrifice something that felt impossible? Not just money, but your dignity, your limits, your right to fall apart when your world is falling apart. If stories like this hit home, make sure you subscribe, because you are not alone here. And tap like or click hype if you've ever been pushed too far by someone who should have protected you instead. This space is for the people who have been underestimated, the people who finally chose themselves. Let's get back to the story. It was a Tuesday when Caleb collapsed. He was in the kitchen, pouring cereal, and I heard the bowl shatter before I heard him hit the floor. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was unconscious. By the time we reached the hospital, the doctors were already talking about a ventilator. They used words like critical window and 48 hours, and I sat in that plastic waiting room chair and felt the whole world tilt sideways. The bills started coming before Caleb even stabilized. I knew how this worked, maybe better than most people. I knew what the numbers meant and what the deadlines meant. I was already on the phone with the billing department, already calculating, already trying to hold the financial side together while my heart was somewhere inside that ICU room with my son. That's when my family arrived. My mother walked in first, then Ryan, then his fiancée Kayla. I thought, for one second, that they had come to sit with me, that they had come to hold my hand or bring coffee or just be there. I was wrong. Ryan pulled me aside near the vending machines. His voice was low but tight. "Look, I know the timing is bad," he said, "but the bookings are non-refundable. We need the $7,000 by tonight or we lose everything." I stared at him. "Ryan, Caleb is on a ventilator." "I know that." He didn't look at me when he said it. "But life doesn't stop. We've been planning this for months." My mother appeared beside him like she'd been waiting for her cue. "You've always helped before, Nora. Why is this different?" Why is this different? My son was fighting for his life 20 feet away, and she was asking me why this was different. I didn't scream. I wanted to. Instead, I stood very still and I felt something shift deep inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something final. There were relatives in that waiting room. Aunts, cousins, family friends who had come to check on Caleb. They all heard it. I watched their eyes move between me and Ryan and my mother, and I saw the discomfort on their faces, and I felt the heat of humiliation crawl up my neck. I was invisible even in my own crisis. That was the moment I understood it clearly, maybe for the first time. Their priorities had never included me. They had never included Caleb. We were resources. We were backup plans. And I had spent 35 years being grateful just to be included at the edges of their lives. Not anymore. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever lived through, and the family pressure didn't ease. It got worse. Ryan started sending messages, not calls, messages, the kind you send when you want to wound someone but keep your hands clean. Hope you can live with ruining my future. That was one of them. Another said, I guess blood only matters when it's convenient for you. I read them in the hospital corridor with my back against a cold wall and Caleb's monitors beeping faintly through a closed door. And I'll be honest with you, I doubted myself. That's the part no one tells you about being the reliable one for so long. You get so conditioned to saying yes, to absorbing the guilt, to believing that your discomfort is the problem, that even when you're right, you question yourself. I sat there and thought, maybe I'm being too rigid. Maybe I should find a way. Maybe I'm making this harder than it needs to be. That's what years of conditioning does to you. It makes you the instrument of your own manipulation. Then came the silence. My family removed me from the group chat. Not dramatically, not with a confrontation. I just opened my phone one morning and the thread was gone. I heard about Ryan's honeymoon planning through a cousin who mentioned it casually, not realizing I didn't already know. Flights booked. Hotel upgraded. Itinerary finalized. With money they assumed was already mine to give. My mother called once during that stretch, not to ask about Caleb, to tell me that Ryan deserved happiness too. He's not asking for the world, she said. He just wants his moment. You've always been the strong one. He needs more support than you do. He needs more support than you do. I wrote that down. I wrote a lot of things down during that time. The worst part came when I found out what they had told people. Extended family, old neighbors, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. They had told them I had promised the money, that I'd committed to covering the honeymoon costs and then backed out at the last minute over a personal disagreement. They made me the villain. They handed me that role without even telling me I'd been cast. My reputation inside that family circle, already fragile, cracked completely. People who didn't know the full story sent me cold messages. One aunt wrote, I'm disappointed in you, Nora. No context, no question, just disappointment handed down like a verdict. And here is where I need to tell you something important. I didn't break. Something shifted instead. The shame they were trying to pour into me stopped landing. Because I realized, standing in that hospital corridor on day 4 of Caleb's ICU stay, that I had been preparing for this moment for a long time, maybe without even knowing it. What they didn't know was that I had stopped trusting them years ago. Not loudly, not with a big declaration, quietly. The way you stop trusting a floor that creaks too much, you don't announce it, you just start stepping more carefully. Over the past 3 years, every time I had lent money, covered a bill, transferred funds to bail out one family crisis or another, I had kept records, screenshots, bank statements with notes written beside the dates. A small, private document that I had started almost as a reflex. The billing assistant in me, unable to let financial transactions exist without documentation. I had a plan they never saw coming. And I wasn't alone in building it. Her name was Dr. Patricia Osei. She was a senior administrator at the hospital, the kind of person who had seen everything and could read a situation in seconds. She noticed me one afternoon, sitting alone in a back corridor, going through my phone with the flat expression of someone running out of fight. She sat down beside me without being asked. You look like someone who's been carrying more than one crisis, she said. I told her enough. She listened without interrupting, which was more than most people had given me in years. "You are not responsible for their choices," she said when I finished. "Not legally, not morally. Your financial obligations are to your son and to yourself. Everything else is pressure dressed up as love." She helped me understand what protections I had. She pointed me toward a hospital social worker who specialized in financial advocacy. She told me to document everything, every message, every demand, every false claim they'd made to others. "If they're telling people you made financial commitments you didn't make," she said carefully, "that matters. That's your name they're using." I went back to my private document that night and I added everything. Every message from Ryan, every guilt trip from my mother, every second-hand account of what they'd told the family. I organized it the way I organized billing disputes at work. Chronologically, clearly, with receipts. Meanwhile, my family grew bolder. They had decided I would eventually give in. That was the pattern. That was always how it ended with me. They planned the honeymoon openly now. Kayla posted about it on her social media. Ryan sent a message to a shared family group, not including me, that I saw screenshotted and forwarded by a cousin who thought I already knew everything. The message thanked the family for their support through a difficult situation. The difficult situation was me. I was the problem they had already solved in their minds. Caleb was starting to improve, slowly. The doctors used words like stabilizing and cautiously optimistic, and I held those words like something precious. He wasn't out of danger yet, but he was fighting. My son was fighting, and so was I. Then came the family gathering. My mother called it a sit-down to resolve things. Neutral language, but I knew what it was. It was an intervention designed to bring me back into line. They expected me to arrive with my head low. They expected guilt and exhaustion to have done the work for them. They expected me to apologize, hand over the money, and return to my place as the dependable one who could always be stretched just a little further. I arrived on time. I sat down. I let them start. Ryan spoke first. "You've put this family through a lot of stress, Nora. We just want to move forward." My mother nodded. "We're not asking for anything unreasonable. We just want things to go back to normal." An aunt who had been told the false version of events added, "You did promise, didn't you? I heard you promised." I let them finish. I didn't interrupt. I waited until the table went quiet and everyone was looking at me, expecting the familiar collapse, the apology, the surrender. Then I opened my folder. "I've been keeping records," I said. My voice was level, not angry, cold in the way that comes from clarity, not cruelty. "Every loan, every transfer, every time I covered something for this family over the last 7 years. I have dates, amounts, and in most cases, the messages that came before and after." I slid the first page across the table toward my mother. She looked at it the way people look at something that suddenly has more teeth than they expected. $34,000, I said. "That's what I've contributed to this family since 2017. Not gifts freely given, requests, pressure, guilt. Some of it was labeled as loans. None of it was ever repaid." Ryan started to speak. I kept going. "I also have the messages you sent me while my son was in the ICU. The ones where you told me I was ruining your future. The ones where you told other family members I had promised money I never promised." I set those pages down too. "You used my name to make commitments I never agreed to. That's not a family disagreement. That's something else entirely." The room was very still. The kind of still that only happens when something true lands in a space full of people who preferred the comfortable version of events. My aunt, the one who had sent me the disappointed message, looked down at the table. My mother's jaw was tight. "You're humiliating this family," she said quietly. "No," I said. "I'm describing it accurately. There's a difference." I looked at Ryan. He was looking at the pages in front of him, not at me. "I'm not paying for the honeymoon," I said. "I'm not paying for anything else in this family until every outstanding amount is acknowledged and a real conversation happens about what's been taken from me over the years. And if that conversation never happens, that's fine too. I've already made my peace with it." I stood up. I picked up my folder. "I came here because I wanted you to hear this from me directly, not through a message. not through someone else. You wanted to resolve things. This is me resolving things. I walked out. Nobody called after me. Caleb was moved out of the ICU 11 days after he was admitted. The doctor who told me used the word remarkable, and I had to step into the hallway to cry because I had been holding that particular wave of emotion for nearly 2 weeks. He was pale and tired and thinner than before, but he looked at me when I walked in and said, "Hi, Mom," in a small, scratchy voice, and I sat beside his bed and held his hand and didn't say anything for a long time. I didn't need to. In the weeks that followed, I focused on him completely. His recovery, his medications, his follow-up appointments, his return to the small routines that made him feel safe. I cooked the foods he liked. I read to him in the evenings. I let the rest of the world exist at a careful distance. My family went quiet, not the warm kind of quiet, the kind that follows an exposure. Ryan and Kayla went on their honeymoon, funded somehow. I didn't ask. My mother called twice. The first time I let it go to voicemail. The second time I answered and she said she wanted to clear the air, and I told her I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. She said, "When will you be ready?" I said honestly, "I don't know." Some cousins reached out with more warmth than I expected. A few admitted they hadn't known the full story. One of them said, "I always thought you were the strong one, but I didn't realize how much that cost you." That one stayed with me. I didn't chase reconciliation. I didn't send long messages or seek apologies or wait for my phone to ring with the validation I used to need. I had spent so long trying to be enough for people who had already decided I was only useful. That chase was exhausting. I was done with it. The peace I found wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a sudden flood of lightness or a cinematic moment of triumph. It was quieter than that. It was Caleb eating breakfast at our kitchen table, talking about a show he wanted to watch, and me sitting across from him with my coffee and realizing that exactly this, was enough. This was what I had been protecting. This was what mattered. The day I stopped trying to be enough for them, I finally became enough for myself. If you've ever been treated like a backup plan instead of family, you know exactly how much that hurts. Not just the financial part. The part where you realize the people who were supposed to know you best had never really looked at you at all. Have you ever been asked to give when you had absolutely nothing left? When you were already running on empty and someone held out their hand anyway? I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments. I read them, every single one. And I want you to know that whatever you've been carrying, you don't have to carry it alone. If this story connected with something in you, subscribe. Not for me, for yourself. Because you deserve a space where your experience is seen. Click hype to help this story reach someone who needs it today. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't walking away. It's realizing you should have done it sooner. That the door you were afraid to close had been draining you for years, and the moment you finally shut it, you could breathe again. Your worth is not measured by what you give. It was never supposed to be. The people who made you feel that way were wrong, and deep down, I think some part of you has always known that. If this story stayed with you, pass it on. Share it with someone who's been the reliable one for too long, someone who's tired, someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is survival. And healing, real healing, always starts the moment you decide that you come first.